At the time, all fear of Columbus would vanish into a pit. On hearing this, they stared wide-eyed, as if seeing a ghost. Weren't they discussing sci-fi? How could John claim he met Columbus? They thought he joked, but John solemnly claimed to be the 14,000-year-old Cro-Magnon, then howled like a caveman, sparking laughter and confusion over his sincerity. He added he moved every decade, fearing discovery of his ageless state, prompting secretive departures. John's story got crazier by the minute, and now the crowd couldn't tell whether he was joking or just too deep into his role. Someone asked John how he knew he was from the Paleolithic age. He replied, "I'm not sure, but rely on archaeologists' info. With maps, anthropology research, and swamp memories, my guesses were suspiciously close to reality." In short, he uses today's data to revisit his rugged past, then recounts his long industrial revolution. At the start of his life, he aged to 35, then stopped, and the tribe, thinking he had powers, made him leader. Initially, everyone revered him, but over time, they grew suspicious, thinking John had discovered the secret to immortality by stealing others' life forces, which led to his exile from the tribe. Ever since then, John led a life of being kicked out of tribes, meanwhile learning how to blend into new ones and making a hasty get back then. As semi-nomads, they moved with weather and prey. John blended in till later. As the weather cooled, John guessed it was post-Ice Age. The archaeologist casually inquired about the landscape. John said mountains like whales, making him suspect he saw the British Isles from modern French coast, based on records and memory. Rolling mountains stood opposite a deep canyon till glaciers melted, the sea level severing them. Biologist asked, "Is this true?" All Black confirmed, "Yes, it matches historical records," while the archaeologist added, "This is all in the books." John said he recalled these from books. Normal people rarely remember childhood. He could barely think back to those distant memories, but when those scenes popped up in the record, only then did he start to piece together those long lost tales. Just after stating this, the biologist again questioned if this could be a case of reincarnation. John firmly stated, "Life is one time only." The female scholar asked, "Aren't you curious about the origins of the world?" This struck a chord with John. At first, he believed there were gods in the sky, but later he realized that maybe it all just randomly happened to him, slowly turning him into an atheist. Even though this sounded absurd, nobody could argue against it since John's logic was impressively airtight. At this point, the female professor casually asked about that Van Gogh painting, initially thinking it was a fake. John said his name was Byrne then, and he worked as a pig farmer. Van Gogh often visited him to paint. Over time, they became friends, often debating how to capture nature in art. Later, he met Turner, Cézanne, and Pissarro. Until Van Gogh passed away, just when it was time for him to immigrate, he moved from France to the US to continue. At that moment, the archaeologist raised the question again, since John knows the secret to immortality. Why tell us now? John thought a moment and said, "Maybe a whim, not a good idea, but I sincerely want to bid farewell." Hearing this, the archaeologist realized John was serious, and if so, his mental state might be questionable. He went to the hall to call a psychologist. Meanwhile, anthropologist Old Black asked John, "In such a distant historical era, didn't John keep any old relics to prove his life?" John countered, "Why keep these? I had no idea then. Like this pen, would I carry it in a millennium? I'd definitely lose it, so how would I know a piece of rock would be worth a fortune back in the day?" This left Old Black speechless, and the knife in his hand was indeed borrowed from a thrift shop by John. As John loaded his luggage into the car, the young professor confessed her love, saying she had fallen for him his first week at school. John felt a fluttering in his heart too, admitting he liked her as well, but would definitely choose to move on after 3 years. Subtitle: John decided not to hinder the young professor's future. They returned, and everyone eagerly asked countless questions. He doubted John could keep telling flawless stories. This time he recounted his eastward journey. Since realizing his uniqueness, he became increasingly curious, setting off towards the sun on his first ocean journey. That's today's Mediterranean. He sailed east and witnessed the Bronze Age firsthand. Then he journeyed the long eastern trade routes, passing countless miraculous works, each uniquely remarkable and overwhelming in quantity. John began learning the language, slowly realizing that simply wandering around was pointless, so he chose to settle and became a Sumerian. That's the Babylonians, later known for Hammurabi's code, who then, forced to move on, headed east to India. just so happened to arrive in the era of Buddha, the most unique person had ever met, who taught him many things. Subtitle: John chose to stay and learn from Buddha. Though Buddha sensed his uniqueness, he never probed John's secrets. When John completed his tale, everyone was left in utter shock, unsure if it was a story or a figment of John's imagination. All Black leaned more towards it being a story. The archaeologist thought John might be mentally unstable. Just then the car arrived, bringing along the psychologist he had called before. The situation is unique, as no one can prove John's truth, nor disprove his lies. Thus, even after the psychologist arrived, John had to continue. He might reveal flaws eventually. Once the psychologist understood, times L pand o grov iamat ta paragraph o circumflex times o amat alcidilla iamat acute grov letter 775 iamat cyrillic letter 4 a circumflex iamat tav circumflex o amat pandant sign 0 arrow the a tilde divide by I o circumflex o amat legetchadizi copyright times o amat alcidilla cyrillic letter 4 I circumflex iamat tav circumflex o amat a acute iamat I circumflex iamat cyrillic letter 4 illa times cyrillic letter 4 not sign a quarter, he directly inquired, to which John replied,